There are a couple news stories I wanted to read. Okay, yeah, there's a couple news stories I do want to read. So let's go over those a little bit. What to start with? Oh, here's one. Oh. This was actually updated recently, sometime last week. The FTC is reportedly likely to file an antitrust lawsuit to block the Microsoft and Activision deal. So the original story reads, the Federal Trade Commission, or the FTC, is reportedly likely to file an antitrust lawsuit to block the $68.7 billion deal that would see Microsoft acquiring Activision Blizzard. As reported by Politico, this news comes by the way of, quote, 3 people with knowledge of the matter, and they stress this lawsuit is, quote, not guaranteed. The FTC's 4 commissioners have taken the time to vote out a complaint or even meet with the lawyers from Microsoft and Activision, but the FTC staff reviewing the deal are skeptical of the company's arguments. As for where the deal stands, much of the heavy lifting has been completed, including depositions of Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella and Activision CEO Bobby Kotick. This means a decision on a potential antitrust lawsuit could arrive as soon as December. The main crux of the problem, according to the FTC, is some worry this deal will give, quote, Microsoft an unfair boost in the video game market, unquote. Sony has obviously been one of the biggest opponents against the deal, and the question of where Call of Duty will appear has been one of the hottest topics. Despite Xbox head Phil Spencer stating Call of Duty will continue to ship on PlayStation as long as there is a PlayStation to ship to, there are still concerns with what other issues this deal may create. Sony has previously said that Microsoft is a tech titan, buying up irreplaceable content at incontestable prices to tip competition to itself, unquote. There are concerns beyond Call of Duty, however, as there is worry that future mega hit titles will do to tip the scales if they are locked behind one platform. Google is also said to be against the deal, claiming Microsoft has, quote, purposely degraded the quality of its Game Pass subscription service when used with Google's Chrome operating system. If the deal were to go through, it believes it would further Microsoft's incentive to do so. Microsoft has disputed many of these claims and acknowledges that even after the deal closes, it would still be in third place. Sorry, 1 second. Microsoft spokesperson David Cuddy said, quote, we'll still oh my god, what is wrong with me today? We'll still trail Sony and Tencent in the market after the deal closes, and together Activision and Xbox will benefit gamers and developers and make the industry more competitive. Alongside the FTC, regulators in Europe and the UK have also launched in-depth probes, meaning the deal likely won't close until the spring at the earliest. Microsoft and Activision have until July 2023 to close the deal, or they will have to renegotiate the agreement. And then on the 24th, which would have been on Thanksgiving, so Thanksgiving evening, Activision had responded. Activision has responded to the report from Politico, saying any suggestion that the deal between Microsoft and Activision could lead to, quote, anti-competitive effects is completely absurd. Furthermore, Activision is ready to battle against any of these claims to ensure the deal will close. an Activision Blizzard spokesperson said to IGN, quote, "Any suggestion that the transaction could lead to anti-competitive effects is completely absurd. This merger will benefit gamers and the U.S. gaming industry, especially as we face increasingly stiff competition from abroad. We are committed to continuing to work cooperatively with creators around the globe to allow the transaction to proceed, but won't hesitate to fight to defend the transaction if required." So it sounds like the FTC will likely end up doing the same thing that the regulators in Europe and the UK have done, in terms of not really intending to block the deal, but essentially forcing Microsoft and Activision Blizzard to, renegotiate the purchase so that it doesn't go against, basically to address any concerns of anti-competitiveness. Yeah, whether or not whether or not Microsoft thinks that's absurd. What the fuck? They would have to adjust the negotiation. Excuse me. Or renegotiate the deal if it gets sued to block. If it gets blocked by that lawsuit. Let's look for another one. Here's one. This comes from Chris Kerr over at GameDeveloper.com. The story is Avalanche Studios investigating hiring practice after a year of staff complaints. Just Cause developer Avalanche Studios has apologized to employees and pledged to investigate its hiring practices after a controversial hire left staff feeling vulnerable, frustrated, and voiceless. And there's a full report from IGN, which I actually haven't read the full report because usually those are pretty long. Is this Rebecca? Yeah. But if you want to read like the actual report, I'll go ahead and put it in chat. If you do want to read the full report from Rebecca Valentine, you can read it here. But we'll get the shorter version from GameDeveloper.com. According to a report from IGN, which is what I linked, based on the accounts of multiple sources familiar with the situation, the apology was issued over a year after Avalanche hired a high-level employee who had been publicly accused of behaving inappropriately towards women at their former workplace. A story we've all heard before. When some employees attempted to voice their concerns about the situation, Avalanche management and HR reportedly refused to open a dialogue, dismissing staff seeking more information about the company's hiring processes, ignoring calls for transparency on how it planned to keep workers safe, and sidelining others who had previously experienced workplace harassment. In short, it's claimed that Avalanche failed to take any meaningful action to reassure those worried about the hire, beyond telling workers they wouldn't have to work directly with that person due to their status as a remote contractor. That promise, however, was reportedly broken in 2022 when they began working in the Avalanche office, during which time they started holding one-to-one meetings with staff members, including women, and making appearances at company events. They were even promoted in 2022 before resigning later on in the year, with Avalanche CEO Pim Holv explaining their departure was related to, quote, project reasons only. For many of those who spoke with IGN, Avalanche's handling of the situation became more problematic than the hire itself, with the company's apparent apathy towards its own workforce coming to a head in November this year when one Avalanche worker called out the studio in a Slack message. In the message, seen by IGN, the employee explained they were, quote, no longer comfortable with the ethical implications of selling my labor to Avalanche Studios Group, unquote. In response, Avalanche CEO Pim Halv, who was tagged in the exchange, sought more information on the situation, eventually addressed the issue later that day, emphasizing that Avalanche had performed a background check during its hiring process and had been provided with the results of a third-party investigation conducted at the person's previous workplace. Holv said in the email, quote, the person has since left their contracted position with us, but the person chose to do so for project reasons only. Their decision had nothing to do with the accusations from their previous workplace. There have been no claims and no suspicion of any misconduct by the person during their time at Avalanche Studios Group, unquote. Holv then pledged to hire a third-party legal company to investigate Avalanche's own hiring practices and told employees to continue raising concerns with HR or by messaging him directly through internal channels. Later that month, Avalanche had held a town hall meeting to allow staff to submit questions and concerns that would be answered in a written Q&A to be distributed internally. According to IGN, one of the most common questions asked by employees sought to understand why the studio didn't act on the concerns of its workers when they were brought to managers or HR. In the days following that meeting, Holv sent 2 emails to staff to more fully explain his position and apologize. In the emails, Holv said that none of the concerns raised by employees over the past year had ever reached him, and said that his own understanding of the events surrounding the hire and Avalanche's handling of the issue had changed after the town hall. Whoops. There we go. Holv wrote in the first email, quote, I can honestly say that your concerns have not reached me in the past year, and I did not know about them, or I would have acted on this information. For that, I'm really sorry. Had I known those things when yesterday's email was written, I would have apologized right there in the email, of course. I don't really buy that. Like, if there was consistent, like we've seen this happen with Activision, with Riot back in the day, with Ubisoft, where the higher up or the CEO didn't get it or didn't get those memos. Like, how could you not know? If there's been multiple reports or multiple concerns, also, why not direct, why not, there had to have been, how could he, I don't even know what to say here. Anyway, the article continues. New facts have surfaced, he continued in the second email sent a few days later, and I have now learned there were concerns raised regarding the employee's leadership style going against our values and code of conduct. All of this highlights a number of flaws in our processes. For this, we are truly sorry. I said it to everyone on Thursday, and I'm saying it again today. We fucked up. Avalanche is now working with independent DEI investigation group Gender Balance to unpack the situation and assess its hiring processes, with the company choosing to work with Gender Balance after workers pushed back on its attempt to rope in a legal firm, instead suggesting the company enlist the help of an organization known for implementing good anti-harassment and anti-discrimination practices. That investigation began on November 21st, 2022, a little bit over a week ago today. That would have been last Monday. When asked to comment on the situation by IGN, Avalanche refused to discuss specifics and provided the statement below, while also pointing the publication to a DEI update on its company website, which we'll go check out in a second. Oh yeah, there's some information here. So here's that link for anyone that is interested in seeing that page for themselves. We're committed to learning from our mistakes and doing much better in the future. To this end, we are implementing concrete steps to review and improve our processes, said Avalanche. This includes a formal investigation that is being led by an external partner to gain clarity on the dynamic of events and identify the flaws in our processes. We're also ensuring that our values and code of conduct are reflected in our everyday interactions and engaging in meaningful dialogue with our employees. This is to ensure that we are creating the truly inclusive, sustainable, and welcoming workplace that all Avalanchers deserve. I feel like this is just... We've heard all of this before. We heard it from higher-ups at Activision Blizzard. Actually, Activision Blizzard handled it much more poorly than this. But we heard it at Riot, we heard it from Ubisoft, we heard it from Activision Blizzard, we're hearing it from Avalanche. They get busted for it, people raise concerns, they go public with it, it ends up in a big report, and then you find out later on that internally they're making promises of changing, but you don't really hear of any real changes being made. And it's just kind of well, disappointing to say the least. But either way, sorry, 1 second. I'm gonna paste those links. What? Okay. Maybe we can find one more story. One or two more stories, maybe. Okay. Here's one. We actually discussed something similar to this, I think sometime last week. Maybe it wasn't last week. Maybe it was the week before. All right. Pentiment game director pledges to update credits to include localization staff. This comes from Chris Kerr over at GameDeveloper.com. Pentiment game director Josh Sawyer had said Obsidian intends to credit localization staff who worked on the title after it was highlighted that the current roll call doesn't include any of those names. The issue was raised by us two senior game designer Hayden Scott Barron, who noted that although Pentament's credit rightly include niche contributions such as an Italian hand gesture consultant, they seem to exclude all of the localization staff whose work allowed Obsidian to launch the RPG in multiple languages. So apparently there was a tweet. Pentament's credits include an Italian hand gesture consultant, but Obsidian excluded all the localization staff. They literally made a game set in Germany and didn't even credit the German translator. The full credits are on this video. I watched several times to check for localization. Did I miss it? Seems super weird that someone would make a game like this and snub localization staff. Looking into this further, it seems to be a problem with all Xbox Game Studios games translated by Lionbridge. Incomplete credits for Halo Infinite, Forza Horizon 5, and AOE 4, Age of Empires 4. Credits dozens of production babies, but no translators. And then Josh Sawyer said, we did not forget them, but thank you for noticing that they aren't there. We asked for lists of translators' names for all languages through our partners and did not receive those lists prior to launch. We have asked again and we'll patch them in as soon as we have them. I think that's essentially what... anyway, the back and forth prompted other developers to weigh in on the issue, with many sharing stories about how they also struggled to learn the names of the specific translators who worked on their projects in a bid to credit them. Other commenters, however, suggested studios, especially those with as much influence as Obsidian, which is owned by industry giant Microsoft, should be actively avoiding localization companies with a history of keeping the names of their workers under wraps. Indeed, Scott Barron thanked Sawyer for his reply, but suggested that, quote, excluding amounts the same as forgetting, unquote, because those who aren't credited at launch are likely to miss being added to video game databases such as Moby Games, which is a good point to make. This isn't the first time a major studio has been accused of failing to credit workers. Last week, a composer who works on God of War Ragnarok said her name was omitted from the game's credits by Santa Monica Studio, and in October 2021, Metroid Dread developer Mercury Steam was called out by multiple developers for refusing to acknowledge their work on the project. Game developers reached out to Microsoft and Obsidian for comment on the situation, but no comment was made. Damn. That just kind of sucks, because knowing that it's like it's not entirely in the developer's hands, except for working with a different outsourcer. But a lot of times I highly doubt the developer, like the studio, gets to decide what company they work with for localization. It's usually going to be up to the publisher. And Obsidian is under Microsoft now, so it's totally up to Microsoft on who they work with, probably. Except Obsidian might actually be under the Bethesda arm. Publishing arm. No, it's Xbox Game Studios. Publishing arm? Publisher. Maybe they are under Bethesda. Never mind. It just kind of sucks because I would hate to be put in that situation where you're getting called out for not crediting the localizers, but it's like, but if you don't have the list of names of those individuals, how are you supposed to put them in the credits? It's like, if you don't get the names, you can't put them in the credits. If you don't put them in the credits, you get called out for it. Like, whoever they were working with should have a list of those names, like, by default. Like, they're an employer, so they should have a list of their employees. Why not just send the list over to whoever they're working with so they can properly credit them? If it's an ongoing problem, why has it not been solved? Like I don't know how they operate internally, but also I apologize for just like eating directly into the mic. Yeah. Anyway, that just kind of sucks. That's an ongoing issue where they're just straight up unable to get a list. Oh, you know what? This was actually... I do want to go over this one real quick. This is a bit of an older story. A few days ago. 3 days ago? Yeah, it would have been on the 26th, this past Saturday. A Swedish company sues Microsoft and Activision Blizzard for collusion. Everyone, including Sony fans everyone, including Sony, fans of all platforms, regulators, and more, has been eyeing Microsoft's $69 billion acquisition, of Activision Blizzard King since it was announced. But while many have largely focused on whether it would form a monopoly or how it would impact Call of Duty on PlayStation consoles, one company has sued the two involved in the purchase for collusion. I don't actually know how to pronounce this name. Shundi Appfonden, a Swedish government-owned agency that manages pensions for the Swedish people, recently filed this lawsuit. No doubt Microsoft's pending acquisition of Activision Blizzard faces a ton of criticisms, but this 205-page complaint... Jesus. 205-page complaint made public on November 10th, filed by that company, and first reported by Bloomberg Law, focuses more on how the deal came about and the terms surrounding CEO Bobby Kotick following Activision Blizzard's many sexual misconduct scandals ahead of the announcement. In short, SAF, we're just going to call this company SAF. I don't know how to pronounce this. Yeah. Or SAP. Let's just call it SAP. In short, Sapfonden, sure, we'll go with that. Sapfonden alleges that the Microsoft and Activision Blizzard merger was, quote, rigged to exploit the beleaguered gaming giant's sexual harassment crisis and protect its CEO, per Bloomberg Law. It further names every current and ex-member of Activision Blizzard's board of directors, stating that the $69 billion price point, which is the biggest acquisition in gaming history, was engineered to allow for an underpriced deal between the two and allow Kotick to keep his position until the end of the regulatory period, at least according to the lawsuit. It claims Microsoft colluded with Activision to acquire the major gaming company, quote, at a bargain price, unquote, and alleges that the process has been a sham. A spokesperson for Activision and Microsoft both addressed this lawsuit in statements to Bloomberg Law, with Activision spokesman Joe Christinat. I'm probably butchering that name, stating, quote, this is a great deal for shareholders. We garnered 98% approval of votes cast. The board went through a thorough process to decide the right move for employees, shareholders, and players. Microsoft's response was short, sweet, and to the point. Our proposed acquisition of Activision Blizzard was negotiated lawfully and fairly. Which is, yeah, short, sweet, and to the point. Can say that again. Continues. It's uncertain which way the Microsoft Activision Blizzard merger will go down, as well as what comes of this lawsuit. These are obviously serious allegations and should not simply be swept under the rug, while everyone eyes what this means for other companies outside Microsoft. For context, it has been reported that if this deal goes through, Microsoft would become the largest gaming company based in the Americas, while it would also become the third largest gaming company in the world behind Chinese company Tencent and Japanese conglomerate Sony. I don't really have much to say on this other than this is definitely a lawsuit that I'm going to follow a lot because I'm interested to I'm fascinated by this because obviously I'm not an expert in this. I don't know anything behind this. But I could believe that there's some kind of collusion. Like, the situation is definitely like right for that kind of thing, but I feel like this is going to be a very complex and drawn out lawsuit to decide whether or not this is collusion or just all totally coincidental. Because I think I've mentioned this before, but the timing of all of the lawsuits, I was gonna say the timing of all of the lawsuits beginning in, oh god, what was it even? Was it 2020 that it started? The summer of 2020 is when all of this shit went down. With Activision Blizzard. If I remember correctly, the timing of that came out long before... No, wait a minute. Microsoft had to have known. Oh, God, I don't know. This is too complicated for... I'm not an expert in any of this shit. That's why I get my news from people who know more about this than me. Because it is from Bloomberg Law. I don't have a subscription to this or anything, but I'd like to get an opinion, the opinion of like someone who understands this a lot more than me. But if you understand a lot more than me, and you're watching this later on, let me know in the comments. If you're in chat, you can let me know there. If you're watching this on YouTube later, you can let me know there. But yeah, pretty wild stuff. Activision just cannot keep out of the news. It's insane. All right, I think that's enough for today. On this. If you're watching this on YouTube later, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any stories that you want me to discuss on the channel, let me know in the comments below. Or you can join the Discord. The link is in the description if you want to join the Discord. And you can bring up whatever news stories you want me to talk about on the channel. And for those watching live, we're going to go ahead and take a quick break